Emily Anderson grew up on the busy streets of Boston, facing the harshness of life with resilience. Her childhood was marked by loss and hardship, especially after her mother's early death when she was just 10 years old. Since then, Emily has bounced from one foster home to another, always searching for a place where she truly belongs. Now at 23, Emily lives in a small apartment in suburban Boston, supporting herself with odd jobs and dreaming of a better life. Despite her emotional scars, she maintains a gentle spirit and a deep desire to care for others, a reflection of the love she felt for her mother. One day, an unexpected opportunity arises. She is hired as a nanny by a rich and influential family, the Montgomerys. The family lives in a large house in Beacon Hill, one of the most expensive neighborhoods in Boston. Her mother, Evelyn Montgomery, is a busy socialite, and her father, Richard Montgomery, is a renowned lawyer. They have a young son, Lucas, a 1-year-old baby. From the beginning, Emily senses that something is wrong in the Montgomery household. Evelyn seems cold and distant, almost never interacting with the baby, while Richard is always busy with work. Lucas is left in Emily's care for long hours, and she soon realizes that the boy is extremely fragile, not just physically but emotionally as well. Lucas suffers from a rare medical condition that requires special care, something that his parents, despite all their wealth, seem to ignore. Emily, who always wanted to be a mother, becomes attached to Lucas in a way she didn't expect. Caring for him awakens in her a deep, unconditional love, something she hasn't felt since her mother's death. As the days pass, the bond between Emily and Lucas grows. She begins to implement small changes in her routine to help the baby's development, investing time and affection in each activity. Lucas responds positively to this love and begins to show signs of improvement, both physically and emotionally. However, the Montgomerys' attitude does not change. Evelyn remains oblivious to the situation, focused on her social life, while Richard sees caring for his son as another obligation to be delegated. Deep down, he is dealing with his own demons, carrying a secret that torments him and that Emily will begin to discover. Emily becomes the beating heart of Lucas's life. Every day with him is a mix of challenges and small triumphs. She reads him stories in funny voices, invents games to stimulate his mind, and lulls him to sleep with soothing songs, which he has never experienced before. The connection between the two grows stronger and stronger, and Lucas begins to blossom under her care. However, as the relationship between Emily and Lucas deepens, tension within the Montgomery household also increases. Evelyn, caught up in her world of social events and appearances, begins to notice Emily's growing influence on her son. She doesn't like that. Evelyn has always controlled everything around her, and the idea that someone on the outside, especially a young nanny with no formal education, could have more of an impact on Lucas than she did, deeply angers her. Richard, on the other hand, is stuck in a cycle of incessant work, rarely returning home before Lucas is asleep. He sees the changes in his son, but is too absorbed by his own worries to pay much attention. Deep down, Richard is a man carrying a heavy burden of guilt. He was responsible for a shady deal at work, something that brought him a lot of money but that consumes him from the inside out. One night, Emily is putting Lucas to bed when she hears loud voices downstairs. It's rare for the Montgomerys to argue, but this fight is different. The words are sharp, and Emily, worried, silently goes downstairs to see what is happening. As she approaches the living room door, she hears Evelyn accusing Richard of neglect, not just towards Lucas but towards the entire family. "You're destroying everything with your work and your lies," she screams. Richard responds coldly, "You don't understand anything, Evelyn. Everything I do is to protect this family. I don't need you judging me, especially when you don't even care about our son." The argument continues, but what catches Emily's attention are the words, lies and protect. Something is wrong, something bigger than she imagined. The mention of a dirty deal at Richard's work makes her uneasy. Emily returns to Lucas's room, trying to shake off her thoughts, but the discomfort remains. In the following days, the atmosphere in the house becomes even heavier. Evelyn begins to find subtle ways to push Emily away from Lucas, suggesting that she take time off or spend less time with him. Evelyn also begins to appear more when caring for the baby, trying to reestablish her role as mother. However, Lucas, who is now accustomed to Emily's affection and dedication, refuses to interact with his mother in the same way, which only increases Evelyn's frustration. Meanwhile, Emily can't ignore what she heard that night. She begins to discreetly investigate Richard's life, looking for clues as to what he may be hiding. She discovers that the lawyer is involved in a corruption scandal that could destroy his career and possibly put the entire family at risk. The situation worsens when Emily finds compromising documents in Richard's office while he is away. These documents reveal illegal financial transactions and the names of influential people involved in the scheme. Now, Emily knows the danger is real, but the decision of what to do leaves her paralyzed. She feels like she's at a crossroads. Should she protect Lucas and get out of the picture before things get worse? Or should she confront Richard and expose the truth? As time passes, Richard begins to notice Emily's restlessness. He becomes more observant, and one tense night confronts her directly, asking what she knows. Emily, overcome by fear, tries to disguise herself, but Richard is not easily fooled. He gives her a grim warning to stay in her place, hinting that he knows ways to silence those who threaten her safety. Emily knows that she is now playing a dangerous game, and that any false step could have serious consequences. But as she looks at Lucas, who depends so much on her, she realizes she can't just ignore what she discovered. Days at the Montgomery home become a minefield of tension and mistrust. Emily feels the weight of responsibility growing every moment, knowing that the secret she carries could explode at any moment. Richard's watchful gaze follows her everywhere, and she realizes that he is aware that she knows too much. However, it is Lucas who keeps her steady. His innocent smile and dependence are the strength that prevents her from running away. One night, while Emily is in Lucas's room reading to him, Richard abruptly enters. His face is tense, marked by a mixture of anger and anxiety. He orders Emily to come to his office as soon as he finishes putting the baby to sleep. The tone in his voice leaves no room for discussion. Emily, already knowing that this confrontation was inevitable, finishes reading the story to Lucas with a lump in her throat. She puts him to sleep, taking her time, as if these last quiet moments are a refuge before the storm. As he walks down the stairs, his hands shake, but his determination is firm. She knows she needs to face Richard, but she also needs to protect Lucas no matter what. In the office, Richard is waiting, sitting behind his desk, with the documents Emily found spread out in front of him. He doesn't waste time with pleasantries. "I know you went through my things, Emily," he begins, his voice low and thick with menace. "You have no idea what you're getting yourself into. People like you who grow up with nothing should know their place." Emily feels anger rising inside her, but she hides it well. "I just want to protect Lucas," she responds, trying to stay calm. "He doesn't deserve to be in the middle of all this." Richard lets out a cold laugh. "Lucas is my son, and I will do whatever is necessary to protect my family. You, on the other hand, are just a babysitter. Do you really think you can change anything here?" At that moment, Emily realizes that she needs to act smart. She can't face Richard head-on, but perhaps she can use his own weapons against him. "You're right," she says, her voice softer now. "I'm just a babysitter, and you have power and connections. But think what would happen if these documents fell into the wrong hands. You said everything you do is to protect your family. But if this comes to light, they will be the first to suffer." Richard stares at her, his eyes assessing the young woman in front of him. He underestimated Emily, that much is clear now. He doesn't respond immediately, the silence between them becoming almost unbearable. Finally, he stands up and approaches her. "I could make you disappear in an instant," he murmurs, but there's a hesitation in his voice that Emily picks up on. He is afraid, perhaps not so much of her, but of the consequences of his actions. Before Richard can say anything else, the office door abruptly opens, revealing Evelyn. His face is pale, but his eyes are of fire. "I heard everything," she says, her voice shaking with a mix of shock and anger. "What are you doing, Richard?" Richard turns around surprised. "Evelyn, He tries to justify, but Evelyn interrupts him. "I always knew you had secrets, Richard, but I never thought it would go this far," she says, tears beginning to fill her eyes. "And now, this young woman, who only wants the best for our son, is being threatened by you?" Emily remains silent, watching the scene unfold. Evelyn takes a few steps into the office and her voice becomes stronger. "If you touch a hair of hers, Richard, I'll hand those documents over to the police myself. No more lies." Richard stands there, shocked and speechless. The tension in the office is palpable. Finally, he realizes that he lost. His wife is willing to expose everything, and he knows he can't fight with her and win. Evelyn turns to Emily, her expression softer now. "Thank you for taking care of Lucas, Emily. I was blind for so long, but you opened my eyes." Emily can only nod, the words failing to come out. She never imagined that Evelyn would side with her, but the whole situation turned upside down. The only certainty is that nothing will be the same. The following days are an emotional roller coaster for Emily. The revelation of Richard Montgomerys' corruption and the unexpected confrontation between him and Evelyn leave the house in a state of controlled chaos. Evelyn, who has always been distant and concerned about her appearance, begins to reevaluate her priorities. While Richard tries to deal with the consequences of what happened, Evelyn makes the decision to act immediately to protect Lucas and resolve the situation once and for all. She hires a trusted lawyer to handle Richard's case and decides to temporarily move to a country house on the outskirts of Boston to escape prying eyes in the media, which is already beginning to sniff out the scandal. She insists that Emily go with them, recognizing that Emily's bond with Lucas is stronger than anyone could imagine. In the new environment, calmer and away from the pressures of Boston's high society, Emily continues to care for Lucas, but now under completely different circumstances. Evelyn, more present and interested, begins to learn from Emily about how to care for her son. They spend hours together, and Evelyn, for the first time, allows herself to be vulnerable. She confesses to Emily that she was always afraid of being a bad mother and that, by hiding behind social events and her appearance, she avoided. Emily, who has also spent her life afraid of failing, shares her own stories of struggle and loss. The two women, so different in their backgrounds, find common ground in their experiences of pain and desire to protect those they love. This new dynamic transforms the relationship between them into something close to a true friendship, where mutual support and respect grow every day. Richard, on the other hand, faces a more difficult path. His career is in shambles and he spends his days locked in his office, avoiding his family. The weight of his actions and the shame he feels at being exposed, especially by Emily, place him in a state of isolation. Despite this, Emily realizes that Richard is not just a villain in the story. He is a broken man, desperately trying to protect what is left of his life. One night, when everyone is asleep, Richard approaches Emily while she is in the garden tending to the flowers. He looks different, more humble and haggard. "I didn't expect things to come to this," he begins, his voice full of regret. "Everything I did was out of fear of losing what I built, but I ended up destroying everything." Emily, feeling the sincerity in his words, listens to him in silence. Richard continues, "I saw how you took care of Lucas, as if he were your own son. And maybe that's what I need to learn. That love is not about control or power, but about care and surrender." This confession marks a turning point for Richard. He begins to make real changes in his life, moving away from his previous career and devoting more time to his family. Although the relationship between him and Evelyn is still strained, they begin to work together, mainly for Lucas's sake. Richard asks for professional help to deal with the traumas and regrets of the past, and little by little, the cold and calculating man gives way to someone more introspective and aware. Emily, in turn, begins to reflect on her own future. Although she has found a temporary home with the Montgomerys, she knows she needs to make her own life. With encouragement from Evelyn and even Richard, she decides to resume her studies, something she had abandoned due to financial and emotional difficulties in the past. She signed up for evening courses, seeking training in childcare, something she discovered was her true passion. The relationship between Emily and Evelyn continues to blossom. The two women, strengthened by their individual journeys of overcoming, now support each other as confidants. Evelyn, upon seeing Emily dedicating herself to her studies, offers to help her financially, something that Emily is initially reluctant to accept but ends up recognizing as a necessary step to move forward. Lucas in turn becomes a symbol of hope and renewal for everyone. The boy who started out as a fragile and neglected child is now full of life and joy. Her health continues to improve, reflecting the loving and stable environment that Emily helped create. In the final moments of this stage, Emily begins to question her place in the world and what the future holds for her. The new strength she found in herself and the friendships she cultivated drive her to move forward, but what comes next is still uncertain. The atmosphere of renewal and hope that has taken over Emily and the Montgomerys' lives is put to the test when unexpected news arrives at the country house. A Boston tabloid newspaper publishes an article detailing Richard Montgomery's involvement in the corruption scandal, exposing all the secrets he tried to hide. The news spreads quickly, and before long, the tranquility they had found in the refuge turns into a new kind of nightmare. Paparazzi surround the property, and calls from reporters are incessant. Evelyn is on the verge of a breakdown, fearing for Lucas's future and the impact this scandal could have on the boy's life. Richard, in turn, seems resigned, as if he knew this moment would come, but still, reality is difficult to face. Emily, always clinging to the protective instinct she developed for Lucas, begins to think about how she can help save the family from total destruction. But the challenge now is immensely greater. It's not just about protecting a baby, but trying to rescue an entire family from the clutches of public scandal. One night, while everyone is trying to deal with the chaos, Emily comes across a box of old letters in Richard's office. Curious, she begins to read the letters and discovers something surprising. Correspondence exchanged between Richard and her own father, where the old Montgomery expressed deep regret for having prioritized financial success over his family. The letters reveal that Richard always fought to gain his father's approval, but in doing so, he ended up repeating the same mistakes. These letters reveal the origins of Richard's behavior and why he allowed himself to become consumed by his career and power. Emily realizes that although Richard has made serious mistakes, he is a man who has ultimately been shaped by unbearable expectations and the pressure of maintaining a facade of success. She understands that to save her family, it is not enough to confront what happened, but to change the public narrative, showing the humanity behind Richard's mistakes. Emily, with Evelyn's reluctant support, decides to take action. She approaches a trusted journalist who has a reputation for telling stories with empathy and truth. Emily agrees to an exclusive interview as long as she can control the narrative, focusing not just on the scandal but on Richard's genuine effort to change and the positive impact he wants to have on Lucas's life. On the day of the interview, Evelyn and Richard are tense, knowing that their lives are in Emily's hands and how she will tell the story. Emily, although nervous, stands her ground. During the interview, she talks about what she's witnessed since working for the Montgomerys, but instead of painting Richard as a villain, she highlights his human side, his flaws and regrets, and his determination to do what's right for him. Your son. The interview is published under the title, The Other Side of Richard Montgomery, a story of repentance and redemption. The article has a huge impact, changing the tone of public discussions about the scandal. While many still judge Richard for his actions, Emily's perspective makes people see the situation more nuanced, and the focus shifts to what he is doing to redeem himself. However, the climax of the story arrives when Richard decides that he needs to face the consequences of his actions in a more concrete way. He prepares to go to the police and confess everything, hoping that his candor can diffuse the situation legally and show the world that he is truly committed to change. Richard doesn't expect immediate forgiveness, but wants to show Lucas that he did the right thing, even if belatedly. Before leaving for the police station, Richard calls Emily into the office. He thanks her deeply, acknowledging that without her, he would never have had the courage to do what he is about to do. You brought something to this family that had been missing for a long time, Emily. And it wasn't just the care for Lucas, but the truth and genuine love that Evelyn and I forgot along the way. An emotional Emily responds, "You have a chance to make a difference in Lucas's life, Richard. What you do now may not erase the past, but it can build a better future for him and for all of you." With these words, Richard leaves for the police station, determined to begin the process of redemption. Evelyn, although still injured, accompanies her husband, showing that she is willing to support his new journey, as long as it is honest. Emily stays at the house looking after Lucas, and as she rocks him to sleep, She reflects on everything that happened. What started as a simple babysitting job turned into a journey of revelations, confrontations, and, ultimately, change. She feels that despite the desperate moments she helped save not just a child but also a family, the weeks following Richard Montgomery's confession are marked by a series of profound changes in the family's life. With Richard's decision to take responsibility for his actions, the pressure from the media gradually eases, giving the family some breathing room. Public opinion, initially harsh, begins to soften as Richard fulfills his promises of reparation. He begins a restitution program, using his wealth to help the victims of the corrupt transactions in which he was involved. This gesture, Evelyn, who has always been so concerned about her public image, finally finds a new way of living, away from the spotlight. She decides to move away from the social obligations that previously occupied all of her time and dedicates herself entirely to Lucas and strengthening her family. In her moments of reflection, she realizes that her obsession with status and perfection was a way of masking her own insecurity, something that almost cost her the love of her life and her son's sanity. Richard, in turn, begins to reconnect with Lucas in a way he never has before. He realizes that to build a true relationship with his son, he needs to be present, honest, and vulnerable. He begins to spend more time at home, getting involved in Lucas's small but meaningful day-to-day activities. Richard's journey is not an easy one. He still faces criticism and internal struggles, but he is committed to doing what is right, not just for his family, but for himself. As the Montgomerys' lives adjust to their new reality, Emily also faces her own transition. With Evelyn's financial support, she returns to her studies and immerses herself in childcare and developmental psychology courses. The experience with Lucas and the challenges she overcame throughout her time working for the Montgomerys confirmed to her that her true purpose is helping children and families. Emily and Evelyn stay in close contact. They became friends and confidants, something they both could never have imagined when they first met. Evelyn frequently consults Emily on how to navigate the new phases of Lucas's life, and together, they share laughter, advice, and even tears during difficult times. The Montgomery home becomes a more serene place, with children's laughter echoing through the hallways, and a sense of peace that once seemed impossible. At a turning point, Emily decides it's time to seek her own independence. Although she loves Lucas and has built a strong bond with him and Evelyn, she feels she must move on and build her own life. She gets a job at a respected daycare in Boston, where she can apply everything she's learned and continue her mission of caring for children. This work not only satisfies her professionally, but also gives her a sense of personal fulfillment. On the day of her farewell to the Montgomery home, Evelyn prepares a special dinner in Emily's honor. It's a night of strong emotions, where memories are shared and promises to stay in touch are made. Lucas, still too young to understand the magnitude of the change, embraces Emily with the pure, innocent love of a child who knows he will always be cared for. Before leaving, Richard, who until then had remained more reserved, approaches Emily. "I know words aren't enough to express how grateful I am to you," he begins, his voice full of sincerity. "You not only took care of my son, but you saved us as a family. You showed us the path to redemption and love, and for that I am forever grateful." Emily, with tears in her eyes, just smiles and replies, "It was Lucas who taught us all this, Richard. He is living proof that even in the midst of difficulties, love can blossom and transform everything around us." With one last hug from Lucas, Emily leaves for her new life, carrying with her the lessons, friendships, and love she found along her journey. 2 years have passed since Emily left the Montgomery home. Life in Boston continues at its fast pace, but for Emily, these years have brought new peace and purpose. Now graduated and working full-time at the daycare she always dreamed of, she feels fulfilled, surrounded by children who, like Lucas, need care and attention to flourish. Your work goes beyond daily tasks. She engages deeply with each child, offering the love and stability they need to grow up safe and happy. Emily kept in touch with the Montgomerys, especially Evelyn, who became a friend and mentor. They see each other regularly, and Evelyn makes a point of bringing Lucas for visits. During these meetings, Lucas, now 3 years old, runs into Emily's arms with the same joy and love as before. He grew into a healthy, energetic boy, a direct reflection of the safe and loving environment he eventually found. Richard, although still facing the challenges of his own redemption, became a present and dedicated father. He still works to repair the damage caused by his past mistakes, but his biggest priority now is being an example for Lucas. He and Evelyn rebuilt their marriage on new, stronger, and more honest foundations. They understood that true love is not without flaws, but rather resilient, capable of overcoming even the greatest challenges when there is a willingness to change and grow. During one of these visits, Emily and Evelyn walk with Lucas through a peaceful park in Boston. Lucas, laughing and running ahead of them, is the living image of the innocence and potential that the future holds. As they watch the boy, Evelyn turns to Emily and with a soft smile says, "I've never thanked you enough, Emily. You've saved our family in more ways than I could count." Emily, holding Evelyn's hand, responds sincerely, "We saved each other, Evelyn. And Lucas, he's proof that love can transform everything." The sun begins to set, casting a golden light over the park. Emily feels a sense of deep contentment, knowing that the journey she began as a nanny has led to something much greater. She found a family, albeit a temporary one, that taught her lessons about love, sacrifice, and most of all, redemption. As they say goodbye at the end of the day, Evelyn holds Emily in a tight hug. "No matter where life takes you, you will always have a place in our family, Emily." Emily smiles, tears in her eyes, and whispers, "And you will always have a place in my heart." As she walks back to her apartment, Emily reflects on the incredible transformation she has undergone. She realizes that true strength doesn't just come from enduring hardship, but from finding the courage to love and be loved, even in the darkest moments. With each step, she feels like she's exactly where she's supposed to be, at peace with herself and the world around her. And so, life goes on. The love that Emily cultivated in the Montgomery household left a lasting mark, not only on the family, but on her own heart. A journey of overcoming that, although full of challenges, led everyone involved to discover the transformative power of love and forgiveness.